Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wild Dispatch. I'm Robin and I'm back with more wild tales from outdoorsy folk around the world. This episode we have Cayden Marquis. He is back. If you haven't heard his story, then head all the way back to episode 5 and you'll be able to hear his origin story, what got him into becoming such a rabid, bow hunting, spear fishing, outdoorsy South African man. But this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. There have been many days that Cayden and I have gone out hunting in South Africa. But this one particular day, I thought it would be fun to go down memory lane. A particularly long and hot day in the South African summer. But first, some other things to note. Archery elk season has arrived. Good luck to everyone who's already out there in the mountains with their bow, trying to whip up a storm. Fingers crossed, lots of actions happening already. I'm actually heading over to Colorado in just a couple of days. I'm going to go chase moose with Michael from the Hunting Stories podcast. Thanks again to Michael for the invite to head over. I'm excited to get over there. First time in Colorado, first time having even seen a moose, I think. So lots of firsts. Then I figured as I'm doing the long drive all the way from coastal California over there, which I think is 20 something hours, I might as well have a little adventure after that and see if I can get an elk with, I've got to say, no prior experience whatsoever. So we will see. If anyone has any tips on how to bag said elk, then by all means, please send me a message on Instagram. I'm going to get out there and see how it goes, but yeah, I'll give updates as I go. Also want to just say a thank you to everyone who's listening. If you're new, then by all means, give the podcast a quick follow or subscribe, depending on how you like to listen. That way you can stay up to date with whatever adventures or interviews are happening. And I think that's it. Time for me to stop waffling. Here's Cayden.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch.
I guess that's what I do, right? Like going, 70 k's an hour in Lycra. It's funny. It doesn't feel dangerous for a bit, and then it does.
I think I might have told you, but I remember when they asked Lance Armstrong, they were like, "Oh, is it actually that bad falling off your bike?" And he was like, "Let's go in the car, and you're gonna put a Lycra second skin on, and we're gonna go 65 k's an hour, and then you're gonna open the door and then jump out and see if it's."
No, I mean, I think that's exactly it, right? You get the privilege of a helmet, but it didn't used to be like that. Fuck.
Yeah. You used to ride without helmets. It's crazy.
Yeah, dude. That shit's crazy. Okay, let's go. Let's do it. Right?
Sweet.
Cayden Marquis, welcome back to the pod.
Thank you. It is definitely good to be back, and I'm excited to share some more stories with you.
Yeah, dude, that's definitely on the cards. It's on the cards. I'm excited to go through one particular day with you. But have you been practicing a lot lately? I know that you've got another hunt coming up soon in Namibia, right?
Well, we just pretty much finalized dates yesterday, actually,
Okay.
which now means starting to get dialed in properly.
Nice.
So I'm changing fletchers. I'm moving away from they're called Vein Tech fletchers, and I'm going back to the AAE
Okay.
fletchers. I've just found the Vein Techs don't hold shape. So if you get pass-throughs on your butt or your target, the Vein Techs bend and warp a bit. So I'm just going to refletch with the AAEs, and then ready to shoot. I mean, I pretty much shoot year round. I mean, I do shoot year round. So I like to stay ready because if you stay ready, you don't need to get ready. So but definitely will start sharpening it up
Yeah, that's cool. No,
before hunts.
I'm the same for sure. Yeah, for sure. And it definitely comes from, I mean, traveling back to South Africa every now and then, and if I time it right, like it can be amazing sometimes because you have a hunt season in the US and then you come straight back and go to South Africa, and so
You're ready to rock,
oh
exactly.
yeah, ready to rock. But also sometimes it would be nice to have a little bit of, I don't know, this sounds like ultra privileged, but yeah, like having a little break would be nice every now and then. But you get those moments. Like I have one right now but
I
also
think
then
even not even besides practicing, but just getting in the mindset. I feel when I've got a hunt lined up and dates in, already my YouTube will become like completely hunting orientated. I'll listen to hunting podcasts, start thinking, um, and you just start getting engrossed in it. Um, so that when you do start your hunt, you're already there, basically.
yeah,
You don't want to take, 2, 3 days to get into it. You want to be into it straight away,
yeah,
ready to
it's
go.
that's a good idea, man. And I think I kind of do the same thing. The intensity ramps up, like the practicing increases. You
Exactly.
start looking at more
Exactly.
stories and all those things. So maybe
Mm.
one day when you're getting ramped up for a hunt, you can come back and listen to this particular podcast and get all fired up for another
For
hunt that's
sure.
coming in the future.
What I also actually do, what I change
Yeah.
when I have a hunt lined up practice wise is I'll shoot a few arrows and then I'll say, okay, this arrow is an animal, and I will try put myself in the mindset of drawing back on an animal.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, not just standing at a range and just drawing back. It's, crouching a bit, starting to get my mindset in it. Um, and it's a completely different ball. It's actually quite um, fascinating how you can change, well, I can change my, like it feels like I'm drawing on an animal. My heart starts like pumping and
Yeah.
um, but I find it to be able to be present in that moment and control it, then it will pass over to the real
That's
moment,
a great
the
idea,
big
dude.
time.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
Mm.
try that for sure because I think you're absolutely right. There's a big difference between shooting at a giant foam block and something with a pulse, right? And so,
Completely.
but yeah, just having that mindset of choosing an arrow, you know, choosing
Yeah.
an arrow amongst them
You
and being like, this is the one. If this misses, I just lost that animal or I just wounded that
exactly.
animal. I think that's a really
Exactly.
good, that's a good way of
Yeah.
practicing the high pressure moments, dude. So
And then
cool.
even what I also like to do is stay at full draw for like a minute or even 2 minutes and then shoot. Because a lot of the time you don't have the privilege of drawing and shooting within, 10
Yeah,
seconds. Maybe the animal's walking, it's doing this, it's doing that. So you just try cover, just start tightening everything up
yeah, I,
and getting dialed.
for sure, dude. I think that there's a moment, isn't there? What you definitely don't want to happen, you draw back on an animal and it's not behaving exactly as you thought it was going to behave. You don't want to then be panicking, thinking the world of like brain thought when you're thinking,
Yeah,
oh, okay, this is like going longer than I planned. Is my shoulder feeling sore? Any of that stuff? If it's all comfortable, if it's all pre-practice, that makes complete sense. So yeah, I think
exactly.
I'm gonna definitely start doing that more. I'm getting hyped up
Yeah,
for
you just
deer
pick an arrow.
season.
You shoot 10 arrows and out of 10 arrows, one arrow, this is it.
It's actually it's a perfect moment to kind of go into the story that we were going to talk about today. It was the beginning of this year, 2023, in January. We actually were hunting together and spent a few days hunting together, right? But there was one particular day. I mean, there were lots of days that were amazing, like lots of opportunities, lots of stalks. But this one day was a particularly long day, and it feels like, yeah, just feels like a good day to kind of go through and kind of memory lane almost. But I feel like there's gold in them hills, as they say. I feel like I might actually write something about this day. So it would be super fun to just like go through it all, think about every detail. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to remember because, you know, I think we were at that point maybe 4 or 5 days in, very, very sleep deprived. A detail about like where we were hunting. It was actually back on Fred's farm, right? Actually, it wasn't Fred's farm, but it was nearby. It was the Fred's area, which is, what's the area? The Eastern Cape. It's Bedford. That's
Bedford,
right.
Eastern Cape.
So yeah, Bedford. And so, yeah, we had like a very long day, successful in the end. So it's like, doesn't matter the amount of suffering as long as you have some success at the end. But yeah, I think, what time were we getting up? Because we were there before first light, I think. And it was...
Yeah, so the biggest thing with hunting in summer is, you know, it gets light so early. Mm-hmm. So we were burning the candle. I mean, you basically finish hunting at 8, get back, eat dinner, talk, go to bed I would get into bed 9:30. You'd do your thing until about 10:30. And then we were up again the next day, I think 3:30.
Yeah.
So it was very, very minimal sleep. So we had obviously been hunting Fred's property, and then he organized us to hunt a neighboring property, which was going to be a very different terrain, a bit more arid, even though they're so close, and big mountain country.
Yeah.
And the area is known for big kudu bulls, good amount of warthog, a lot of blesbuck, impala, the usual fallow deer, but tough hunting, tough conditions.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just like doubly tough when it's super hot, you know. And it was hot, and
Yes.
It's kind of like a little bit of information about the area, but like it seems like every time I go somewhere different in South Africa, and I guess this would make sense to anywhere, any country, but at least in my experience, you go to a different part of the country and the weather is just has its own vibe, you know. The landscape has its own vibe, but the weather has its own vibe. And whereas I guess we were normally when we've been hunting together in Langebaan over at Tace's place in the West Coast, it's cooler, generally a bit cooler. It's by the coast. It's a bit drier, I think. But like the Eastern Cape...
We actually hunted... We weren't even supposed to hunt at Fred's place.
Yes, you're right.
We were supposed to be at your spot in the Karoo.
Yep.
But we couldn't go because...
It was too hot.
It would have been silly. It was 50... I mean, it was 38, 39, 40 degrees.
Yeah.
Celsius.
Yeah, which is like over. I think it's like 100. Yeah, it's super hot.
Somewhere on there, Fahrenheit.
No. Yeah, you're right.
So,
dude.
And I'd obviously been at Fred with my brother hunting for a couple of days, and I just said, Fred, listen, we're going hunting in the Karoo. It's going to be terrible, and there's no warthogs. Do you mind if we just stay here? And Robin and I just hunt this place. And he was like, but 100%.
Yeah, so yeah, and endlessly grateful for that hookup because I mean we're gonna go back for sure. Like I think when we were gonna go up to the Karoo, which was the place where we were originally gonna go, we were gonna be hunting actually mountain sheep, which is, you know, epic. It's always epic hunting sheep. I've not been, at least that's what I've seen and heard stories about. Like I've not been lucky enough to do it yet myself, but they have Barbary sheep there, right? Which are like an African species from North Africa originally, but they have them down in the mountains, which is kind of a bit more central South Africa. I mean, maybe it would have been fine, but I think it was wise for us to head somewhere where it could be a little cooler, rather than us.
And also with warthogs, it's too dry out there for pigs. So
yeah, exactly. So where were we? Sorry, we it's like first light, or even it's dark. We like travel. We got to this other farm.
I mean, it was pitch black. Started the Toyota, the Toyota Bucky, like we say, or pickup truck.
Yeah.
I think it's from the 80s.
Yeah.
The coolest.
So cool.
Coolest truck. I think we spent about 15, 20 minutes trying to figure out the immobilizer.
I
Trying
forgot
to,
about that.
turn the wheel, all this
It's like beeping, right? Like it's
configuration.
beeping, going like beep beep,
Yeah,
like, and we're like kind
gosh.
of near the farm with Fred's family, and we're thinking like, oh, you don't want to wake these guys up too much at like 3:30 in the
No,
morning.
I mean, then we got on the road and we're cruising, obviously just ear to ear smiles. So the area we're hunting, basically, it's a high fenced triangular area. So we hunted that triangle for the morning, and then remember, then we're going to go across to the other side,
Yeah,
see
yeah,
what we
yeah,
can do in the triangle, and then move across. So we drove, found a good parking spot in the bushes,
yep,
and yeah, got into the property, and then it was kind of, I mean, I think it just started ramping up from the beginning.
yeah. I remember. Yeah, it was
We
pretty.
came to that dam, and there were those fallow like right there. That whole herd, there must have been about 30 or 40 of them.
I'm trying to even remember. So by the dam. Oh yes, I
You
remember.
remember
Okay.
we're in those ditches,
Yeah,
and eventually we just had to say we can't do anything here. We need
there's
to
too many eyes.
just walk. So then we continued walking into these thickets and not seeing animals. Saw a few kudu in the out in the bushes, and then we got to that area where it all started ramping up, and we saw those herd of like 15 stags, and those huge fellow stags.
Yeah, they were big, weren't they? And it's early season still for them. Like they're it's still in felt in their antlers, but they were still
Yes,
like. I mean, I don't know if maybe they were fully grown at that point, but their antlers were massive.
they were close to. I mean, those things were giant.
Yeah, they were big.
Um,
We also though before that we remember we saw what was it? I think I looked it up afterwards. Like a crazy bird. It was called the
yes,
snake
I
catcher
always
bird.
forget that.
And this
Yes,
is
snake
something
catcher.
like I've never seen this creature before. Like obviously most of the time when I go hunting in South Africa, it's not unusual to be like, oh, I've never seen that animal before. But a snake catcher bird is insane as an animal. It's almost like I'm trying to think how you describe it. It's like if a road runner had sex with someone going to like a neon rave and then took a bunch of steroids and grew to be like a giant size that's like 5 foot tall, like four and a
Oh,
half foot
I can.
tall. They have ridiculously long legs that are like 2 or 3 foot long, specifically apparently evolved so that they don't get bitten by one of the many poisonous snakes that can kill any of us over there.
Yeah, I mean, they would just catch and kill cobra. I mean, they do everything.
Yeah, they've got this like wild shock of feathers off the back of their head. They kind of it's
It
very
actually kind
cool.
of looks similar to almost like a phoenix, if you
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that sort of majestic animal. But yeah, then I think then we found those fallows, which was also a bizarre situation.
Okay, so you mean the fallows like the bachelor herd of big guys?
Yes,
And yeah, I
that herd of
remember.
stags.
I remember it was funny because there was like what 4 or 5 of them all together in like a little I don't know a little thicket of trees, and they were all
Mm,
bedded down, and at first they seemed kind of chill, right? But then
yeah,
for some reason we were like watching them for I don't know 20, 30 minutes, just seeing what would happen, and then periodically, if I remember correctly, like more fallows
no,
started
like
running
you
in,
just see
right?
these deer running, and then they would just
They would run and
join,
join, and we were like
join.
trying to figure out like what's going on, like why are they all bedding down together so suddenly? Trying to figure it out, and then I think we figured it out, right? Like there was this very distant sound of like beeping or like construction work happening, maybe like 1 or 2 kilometers away,
Yeah,
like
so there was road construction happening, and the one borderline of the property was parallel to the road
yeah.
where they would do construction. So that noise had scared all the fallow into this one little spot, obviously where they felt safe. And then we were just sitting trying to figure out, oh, what are we gonna do here? And then you're like, dude, do you hear that? It sounds like a pig. And I was like,
Yeah.
nah, there's nothing. He's like, no, I can hear something. And I think we were sitting or lying, and then you were just like, dude, there's pigs behind us. And I mean, we had like three warthogs at what, like 20
It
yards.
was less, man. I think it was
It
15
was,
or
yeah,
less, right?
it was so close. Um,
But do you remember we tried something out? Like this is another great moment of like learning from the wisdoms of Fred Hammer. But we did it. He told us a story beforehand. I'm sure we'll like cover this story in more depth at some point in the future. But we kind of learned this trick, which I mean, it makes sense and it probably seems obvious, right? But like make like a bush. We in South Africa, at least hunting with these guys who are like legends, they all wear like full face camo and like leafy jackets as well, which seems like, I guess in the US maybe it would seem overkill, but like with the highly evolved eyes of all the animals in South Africa, it's like it makes such a difference. It really makes a difference. So the trick that we heard from a story from Fred is just basically like one person leans their arm over the other and you kind of basically two balls, but it's one coagulated mess of kind of leafy bush with your jackets. You have a good chance if you stay super still, if the wind's okay and you have like an ounce of luck. Yeah, you have a chance that they're not going to see you. So having just heard this story at the dinner table the night before, we were like, let's try that. You know, let's try it. Like, and I think you, Cayden, you put your arm over me, and I was like, oh, I know what's going on. This isn't necessarily like, it's not a bro moment. this is trying to not get busted by the warthog.
I think you try to hug me or something and tell me you love it.
Yeah, and so that was super cool, right? Because at that moment the pigs
and it worked.
Yeah,
I mean, those pigs were chilling. The only problem is we had to move to get our bows.
Yeah, but they trotted past us, and at the very least,
yeah,
just not spooking those guys.
Yeah, I mean, it literally just worked. Just being dead still as like a bush.
Yeah,
breaking your outline.
Exactly. So they trotted on, right? And I think maybe we tried to pursue them, but the wind was a bit swirly at that point. Is that right?
The wind was like, I just remember wind just all over the place.
Yeah, it was tough.
And then the fallow, we just knew, we sat there and there was just no way for us to get closer. And then we had those three young boars pop up out of nowhere, and they were just running circles, chasing each other.
This is warthogs, right?
Yeah. So we had those three young warthog boars just going berserker. We try to we try to get in and stalk them. Shoes off, like run a bit, hide. Then it would be they've run away. Full circle, they're coming to us.
Yeah.
And we tried and didn't manage to get it done, but it was just like an hour of just animals.
Yeah.
And then it started getting hot.
Yeah.
And it got really hot.
I think it was sorry to interrupt. It was like probably about 10 a.m. by that point, I'd say. Maybe like 9, 10 a.m., which would normally be too hot for the area. But like it was properly clouded over, if you remember that morning.
Yes, it was humid.
Yeah, it was humid and clouded over. So it was almost like all the animals came out to play late. It wasn't like first light action so much. I mean, we had enough action at first light as well. But yeah. And so you're right. That moment with the warthogs, and I've never seen that before. I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but where they're like chasing each other. But it was definitely a funny moment. Normally your instinct, at least with my low success rate, is that you see an animal running, you're like, oh, I've busted it. We've blown them, right? But seeing them,
and they were just chasing each other
around in circles. It was just, it was super cool. And like, felt like, oh, we can actually, the funniest thing was we could move in the window when they would like run behind the bush. We're like, okay, step, stop. And they're just like totally in their own world. But I think the wind was our enemy on that one.
Once we realized we couldn't get it done, I don't know if you remember, we turned around and it was like, which bush did we leave our stuff at?
Oh man. Yeah, that was a
lesson.
lesson.
It was like a 20-minute search trying to find this damn bush. But we did find it eventually.
Yeah.
And then, that it just got too hot. So we said, okay, let's pack up here and we're going to move over to the mountains. And because we know from about 10 o'clock to, 3 o'clock, there's not really going to be anything.
Yeah,
everything's going to be bedded.
Yeah, it's too hot. It's like 100 plus degrees Fahrenheit.
No, it was cooking.
Yeah. But do you remember actually before we even got over to the other side and started checking out the animals on the hill over on the east side, I think. As we were kind of heading back, and it was getting really hot, all the animals seemed to be gone. We did actually find those warthogs that were kind of. It wasn't exactly clear what they were doing straight away, right? But I think they were heading off, like they had that kind of sleepy lull. They were kind of heading off to an area where maybe they were going to go bed somewhere, probably underground because it was so hot. Remember that?
Dude, we saw those three warthogs. I think it was two sows and a boar, three young boars, or whatever they were. They were definitely shooters.
Yeah.
And yeah, so basically to describe the terrain, it was it was flat terrain, but with very slight undulations, which, with a pig being, a warthog being slightly lower, we could very easily see them.
Yeah.
But then when you walked and you maybe dipped down a bit, it would be harder to see them, which was great for cover. So it was basically a kind of open terrain, few trees, a bush here, a bush there. So we're like, I think we must have been at about 60 yards. The wind was good. It was, let's just give it a bash. I mean,
yeah, it was behaving itself just for a moment, right? Because it had been swirling, but
swirling like crazy.
It was good.
And yeah, I mean, those pigs were obviously getting ready to go into a burrow, into bed, before it got too hot. So he said, let's just see what we can do. And then, slipped off my shoes. You hung back a bit, and we started going in.
At that point, I think we were like, 45, 50 yards away, maybe. And also, just one thing is, it's like flat terrain with a few bushes, but there was this kind of like raised red slight bank, right? Like there was just this kind of like raised area, which can sometimes be like prime. You get to a red bank like that, sometimes it's the beginning of like a little lake or pond, or there might be some like burrows in it or something. You never quite know when you go.
No, we didn't actually quite know it, now that I think of it. So then, we closed the distance to it must have been about 30 yards.
Yeah.
And then about 25, and I couldn't see anything. I could see the tree where they were standing around. And at this point, I think, if I remember correctly, I was actually crawling.
Yeah.
Just to stay low.
Yeah, yeah. At least crouching, like super low.
Yeah, crouching. I was definitely low. I wasn't standing.
Mm-hmm.
And after a few minutes, I was looking back at you. It was like, what are these pigs? We can't see them. They must have got into bed and I'm not going to get them. So I decided, okay, well, it's obviously over. Let me stand up.
But by this point, you were like, from my perspective, you were like really close to that bank.
Yeah, no, so I must have been within 20.
Yeah.
But I just, because of slight undulation, you couldn't see anything. So obviously the pigs have gone to bed and got in their burrow. And said, okay, let's stand up and get to the other side. And obviously, as soon as I stand up, there's 3 pigs lying completely exposed. And man, it would have been a perfect shot if I had just taken precautions that they could be there. Yeah. And it's happened to me multiple times before, where you just have a slight suspicion that an animal's there, but no, it can't be. There's no ways. And then you expose yourself, and of course, that animal is right there, just chilling.
I just wish I wish I wasn't behind you at that point. I don't know if I could have been like a fly on the wall. Like I wish I could have seen the look on both your face and the warthog's face as it's laying there like Playboy centerfold
in the sun. Yeah, in the sun, just absolutely chilling. There would have been a very nice dirt nap for one of them.
Oh, for sure. But instead, I guess all I saw is you stand up and was like, oh, why is he standing up? Are they gone? And then, whoop, just to right and left, these pigs just go flying. These warthogs are just gone. But I think, didn't you at some point say, I thought on the day you said that you saw one of them even with their head like kind of half poking out of a burrow as well?
So that's what had happened actually. so much stuff happens with hunting, you actually forget a lot of the details. But exactly, you spot on. One of their heads I could see was, I could see it in a burrow or something, and it was just like, okay, well, it's done now. So the one went in, and I think the two others, anyway, they were gone.
Yeah, man.
Very easily gone. Um, but I think that's one of the best things, obviously, hunting for me personally. Love to hunt areas that have a lot of warthogs because it's constant. You mess up, analyze what happened, which I think is very important for guys. I found one of the biggest things that has helped me
Yeah.
is after I mess up a stalk or after I'm successful on a stalk is to just do a short analysis of what I did and what I would change. And especially hunting with someone else, I will say to them, or I would have said it to you even, what could we have done differently?
Yeah.
And then, because I think if you are just hunting and messing up, you need to be learning from your mistakes. So by taking a minute or two and saying, you know what, should have, what I actually should have done was crept even further and, X, Y, and Z, then because if you keep on making the same mistakes, like you're not actually learning. So the biggest thing that I've found, or one of the biggest things, is to analyze what exactly happened.
Yeah, and I think we're human, right? Like I've done exactly the same thing where, and I guess most hunts end by with a mistake, obviously. But it's just when it can be like the same mistake keeps happening again and again, it's that can be frustrating, but it's all part of the learning process. So yeah,
No, for
like,
sure.
and actually like a bit of a foreshadowing moment, I guess because of that stalk not working out, we learned from our mistakes and didn't like kind of expect the hunt to be
Yeah,
done later on in the day, because it was like everything said that this hunt will be over and then it wasn't. So
exactly. Yeah, then we made our way to the truck and drove to the base of the mountain.
that's right. But I remember even getting over to the other side, because so the way the
Oh, we had to
property,
go.
it's like a few thousand acres. It's a big property.
Hmm.
If I remember correctly, it was getting to that time. It was super hot, and we were like, okay, now's a good time. We can move more. Things are kind of either underground or hiding in shade. Let's get over to
Yeah.
the other side where it's more mountainous, which should have been simple, except I think we like tried to make a shortcut and cut across to the fence, and then like the idea would be I think we even actually found a tunnel, right? Like there was a drainage tunnel
Yes.
underneath the road, which was great in theory, except there was also like a big fence to stop you from like, or animals, because there's all these animals around, but to stop them from getting into the road. So I think wisdom and experience was on your side there. You were like, oh, I'm just going to climb over this fence, which I think is that was like a 10 or 12-foot fence. It was high. Yeah, it was a really high fence. And I'm like,
Yeah.
like what? We're going to pass bows and stuff over? Like, I don't know. Maybe I was being overly cautious, but I was like, oh, look, there's a little hole here. I can squeeze through that. But little did I guess I wasn't really thinking about the fact I was wearing like a leafy ghillie jacket, which is going to get all caught up in the wires. It was like a chain link fence, right? Like, oh. So yeah, there was a bit of a bit of a procedure. I think that you had to kind of
It was hot.
surgically.
I mean, it was hot.
Yeah,
You've
exactly.
been out.
Yeah, you're like
Um,
sweltering in the heat, caught in the
I
fence
remember just
line.
getting back to the bucky or the pickup and just hammering that Powerade, which was like a Gatorade,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
smoked it.
And it was
Um,
warm. It was like on the back of the truck, right? And it had just been
Feels
like
so
it
good
was
though.
like hot tea. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that.
and then we basically just had to we said, okay, well, there's the mountain, let's just get there. So we kind of just figured out our route to the mountain. And yeah, I mean, we basically parked at like a reservoir and just started climbing
Yeah.
to get elevation. because we knew we were gonna have to sit there for hours before animals start moving again. And our plan was basically to sit up there. Once we see animals start moving, make our make a decision and see what we're gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that time went pretty fast, didn't it? Like in a way. I guess once we
I think
got
I think I fell asleep
yeah, I
up
think we
top there.
both did. We both took a nap, a well-deserved
Yeah.
nap at the top of the hill. Well, it wasn't quite at the top, but halfway up maybe. But yeah, definitely a shady spot under like a small tree was like one of the only bits of shade there, right? And
And I mean, yeah, we saw then those baboons were at the top of the mountain going crazy.
oh
Well, they were
yeah,
fighting with each other.
oh I forgot about
Um,
that.
and then, yeah, we basically just started like just glassing and seeing a kudu cow, maybe a fallow deer,
Yeah,
but nothing stalkable, nothing in the valley below.
there was a herd of
Um,
kudu, right? Like we spotted
yeah,
them with
yeah, there
like
was
two
the,
k's
the
away,
longer you
something
look
like
through the
that.
binos, you would just start seeing things. And then, yeah, I mean, after a couple hours, when it started to get cooler at about, I think it must have been 3:30, 4 o'clock, we were tired, and then for me, a warthog is the greatest animal on the planet. I started seeing pigs,
Yeah.
and then it was like, hands on, let's go. Like run down the mountain. But we actually we sat up there and just started, we just started. I mean, it was so strange. The pigs just started appearing from nowhere, and they were covered in mud. If you remember,
Yeah, I
they'd
do.
all they just started going for mud baths.
There was this amazing like terrain, right? Like I remember we were high up on the side of this hill, and I think I have a couple of pics that I'll put in the bottom. But it was kind of this amazing view across this whole sprawling
Landscape.
valley
Yeah.
landscape, and there was an area with like a bunch of prickly pears, which I
Mm.
think was where we were ultimately trying to head to because we'd seen some pigs, some warthogs, like snuffling around there, and they apparently love those prickly pears, right? They like get all up in there. So that was our theory, but that pile of prickly pears was quite far away. I think that was like a couple of k's away, or 1.5 k's away, maybe. I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
exaggerating, but that feels like it was about that distance. And
No,
then
it's far.
also with this terrain, you've got prickly pears and you've got like thickety brush kind of bushes that are no bigger than
And also a
maybe
lot of
eight
rolling. Like it
rolling
looks flat,
terrain.
but it's
Yeah, that's
not. It
right.
was like just rolling.
Like just it's almost as if you imagine like you're looking down a long valley, and to the left you've got a high mountain which is super rocky with like a mesa or a mesa, as you'd say in America, like across the top, like a flat top mountain. And then all the way down into this valley, you've got these like fingers, like these finger ridges coming all the way down and interspersed with a bunch of like bushy, thickety kind of terrain. But then there's also this amazing floodplain, isn't there? Right? Like I guess it's so hot there when there's a big rain, it floods like properly. So it was just like
Yes.
this swept red clay finger ridges for like a huge area that's maybe like 800 meters or yards like square, like a big area where we'd seen some pigs as well, I think, like just trotting around. Yeah, so that was kind of just to kind of set the scene. So we moved through there, right? We were decided like, okay, we're seeing some animals, and we're going to
Yeah,
start heading
so we
through.
actually so we went so we started we walked down the mountain,
Mm.
and there were those two dams where we had seen those warthogs,
Yeah, yeah,
and we got to the edge of the dam and we're gonna work cross past the dam, and then basically our plan was let's split up on this side, walk around,
yeah, yeah.
meet,
I've
and
forgotten
we're
that.
gonna go.
Yeah,
But I had a slight suspicion that where the pigs were, so you were taking your time. Between us, I kind of sprinted around.
okay.
And I got into this ditch, and as I got into this drainage like finger like you're describing, I saw these pigs, big sow coming, and I'm sitting behind this like cactus bush, and now I'm thinking, am I going to shoot from this side? Am I going to shoot from this side of the bush? Trying to figure out what's happening.
Yeah.
I can see the pigs are coming 30 yards, 25. And in trying to figure out what side I'm going to shoot from, I got bust.
Oh no.
And then we met up, and
I don't think you even told me about that at the time. Maybe you
yeah,
must
I
have.
just said like, I saw a pig or something, but it was really close. I
Yeah.
was super close to getting it done. And then yeah, we just carried on walking towards the prickly pears. And if I remember, yeah, it was actually quite quiet until we saw those fallow.
I don't even remember those fallow. Were there fallow on that side, on the
Do
north
you
side?
remember? So we had those fallow super close.
Mm,
Um, they were spread out, and then you went in ahead of me, and I hung back, and you were stuck on your haunches
mm.
ages. When that fellow tried to walk in.
Funny. Sleep deprivation is an amazing thing. I can't even remember
Yeah.
that. But you
No,
tell
no,
it, because
we
I.
we were on these things for like 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
Eventually, they were all staring at us, and they just didn't know because it was getting quite low light. They didn't even know what was happening.
Yeah.
Because, so I mean, obviously at this stage, we've been ups for 12, 13 hours. So even 14, I mean, it must have been about 5, nearly 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was, we were drained, but we just carried on, hammering.
Yeah.
And we're now about, I mean, well over a kilometer, 1.5 k's from the car.
Yeah. The truck.
Um, and I mean, it was because everything was like undulating hills. It was always that, no, over the next hill there's going to be something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So we'd walk there, nothing. No, no, no. Over the next one, like, let's just do it. And we just hammered, hammered, hammered. And then we came over that hill, and this was fading light. And we
Yeah.
had been chatting the whole day, well, me specifically, about this milkshake from this restaurant in town that we are going to get on the way back. And I knew the hotel closed at 8 o'clock or 8:30, something like that. But I was just salivating for this milkshake. The day's nearly over. Like, we're gonna get it. I'm so
Uh,
excited. Worked like my butt off today. Gonna
that,
go back, massive chocolate milkshake, and sail into the sunset type thing.
that makes so much sense now, because, dude, I didn't know this whole like love story that was going on in your brain with a milkshake the whole day, because normally I'm like hunting with you, I'm like, oh shit, I'm like trying to hang on, like just keep up, because you are hammering everything so hard. So I like might turn my head like it was on a swivel at about 7:30, or maybe it was about, I don't know, 7 p.m. When you're like, oh, maybe should, we've probably got like 40 minutes of light left, absolute, when it's absolute
Yes.
dark.
Yeah.
To hear you say like, maybe we should go back to the truck, I was like, what? What are you talking
I
about?
just
Like,
had
so,
a liter milkshake in my mind.
and that makes so much more sense, because I was like, wow, I've never ever heard those words come from this man's mouth before. So I was surprised, but I'm glad that I was like, oh yeah, no, maybe
No, you're
they'll be
persistent. You're
open
like, the
later.
next one.
Let's just go
Yeah.
to the next hill. There might be something there, There might be something there. And do you remember?
And we weren't seeing anything.
We weren't seeing anything. All we were seeing was anthills, like
Yes.
everywhere. And this is something about the area, like in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. There's these big red like anthills, or are they termite hills? I'm not sure what they are, but like
Termite mounds.
they're termite mounds, and these things are like, they can be massive, but often you'll see them and they're like quite a few feet across and like as tall as a man, right? I don't know if I'm exaggerating. I think that that's about right, but also
No, yeah, you get
there's a
huge
lot
ones.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of them that are a bit smaller as well, and they're like dotted across the landscape. And the funny thing is that like slightly reddish earthy color with the sun shining off the top of it, it's that rounded like flat top, really looks like the back of an animal. So the trouble is, you're walking around the wilderness there, and you are like, every 2 minutes you're like, oh, there's an animal. Oh, that little moment you feel in your heart, right, when you're like, oh,
Sleep
there's a buck,
deprivation,
there's a buck, there's
exhaustion,
a pig. Ugh.
mixed with light.
And it was like the whole day, and especially because I'm like, new to the area in the Eastern Cape, the whole day I was like, oh, there's an animal. Oh, and every time I was like, just look, you never know, just look. And every time it had been like, oh, it's another anthill. So at like last light, like, I don't know, 7:20, there was probably 10 minutes of light left. I like had a moment coming over a hillside with, again, that feeling like, oh, there's another anthill. And I for some reason I was like, I'm just going to look this one last time. But it was actually like a reasonably big warthog boar, right? Like just there, just
Massive,
with
dude.
his back
I mean, you
turned.
said to me, there's an animal. No. And then I pulled my binos up and I was like, holy smokes, that thing is huge. So a lot of the time, warthog boars, when they get really big, will almost become nocturnal.
Okay.
Just to so they don't predate it and that sort of stuff. So this thing had just come out to feed at last light and obviously feed into the night.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was like, whoa, that thing is huge. And fortunately, we literally jumped into that huge riverbed, or those fingers, those drainage lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we even slipped our boots off.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Like quickly slipped our boots off, and we were in that drainage line, and the pig was feeding on the left-hand side.
It was almost like a if you imagine like a mini in the kind of really dry places. I'm sure it's in other places in the US as well, but like mini canyon, right? Like these mini canyons,
Exactly.
like a
Yeah,
tiny
it's a
thing
mini canyon.
that's like probably only the height up to your maybe up to your nipples, right? Like
Completely.
that's the kind of height that it is. So if you can actually use that if you really crouch, you're like kind of like
Yeah,
if
you
something
cover
is on the
it.
if
No.
something is on the bank, they can't really see in. So it's like a perfect little tube to like
Especially
deliver
with the
you.
low
Yeah.
light, and it was perfect.
Yeah.
The only issue was it was dry, so we had to take our boots off and just, walk in socks. So
Pray
we
to
dropped our
avoid.
boots, our packs, and yeah, we just started stalking to this thing. And eventually, I mean, it was less than 20,
Yeah, it was
and
close.
he was on the left-hand side, and I was like, just get it done, dude. And
You're filming as well at this point, I think.
oh yeah, I was.
Yeah.
I was filming, and you were sitting there, and I was like, why isn't this just draw back, draw back? Backseat driver. Um, and obviously, you can't I can't say to you, like, dude, draw back, like, get it done now, get it done now. I mean, you'll probably remember better that exact
So
pattern,
I
but I
think
remember something strange happened.
yeah, okay. So that moment. No, I mean go. You can go ahead. I can explain in a second. Something strange happened. Do you
That's
remember?
what happened. I remember. Finally, you start drawing back, and your bow's been performing perfectly forever, and it's just. I just remember this thing just creaked. I mean, I don't even know what was making a noise.
It was such a comedy
Uh,
noise.
And I was just like, oh my goodness, like how, no ways this is happening.
So this warthog is, yeah, I guess from like my perspective, which is like a few yards in front of you, I like crept
Because
in, got.
you slightly climbed up the bank.
I climbed up the bank slightly because
You were
there
like
were
1 foot is
yeah, there were like a
high,
few.
one down, a very hard shooting angle.
Yeah, there were quite a few bushes, like low level bushes at the edge of the bank, and the pig was maybe only 12 yards behind that. The warthog was only 12 yards behind
Yeah.
that. And the thing was, it was kind of feeding around, but it was feeding kind of towards us. So it ended up being at that point, it was a bit of a quartering. The direction that it was heading was like quartering toward, like just
Yes.
heading from right to left, like across. So it was a tricky.
Which is a tough
It
shot.
was
It's
a
a tough, very tough
yeah,
shot.
it's a tricky shot, and I don't know, like I was trying to be cautious, but like only take the shot if it feels right.
Especially we've got 15 minutes till
Yeah,
darkness.
exactly.
I mean, the sun had already set. Or the sun was setting. It
So
was very close.
that moment of like super high, like we've been hunting all day, like hitting the pavement, not with no pavement, but like pounding the ground, like covering a lot of time, like in the extreme heat, and it gets to this moment of like, oh, this pig, it's there, this is it, this is the moment, and like he finally presents like a broadside shot, or he's like just getting to that point. So I'm like, I'm gonna draw back, and yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the shaft of the arrow going along the rest. or if it was
Yeah.
the cams. I think it was maybe the cams, but like very, very occasionally, like if I haven't moved my bow in a while, this like. I have a really long draw. It's like a 32-inch arrow as well. So that
No,
thing,
no,
that whole draw in slow motion, that noise came out, and that pig had no idea we were there before. And then suddenly it knows, it is like looking at us, like something is up. It doesn't know what we are because we just look like two, you know, two bushes with arms and a bow that's drawn. But like he doesn't know what's going on, right? But he, at that point, then he does what you'd expect most animals to do, which is like head into the wind, or no, head downwind, right? He then turned and like started looping around us. Yeah, and I think actually at that point, because I have this little footage, I was looking at it before we did this chat. You actually stopped videoing at that point, and I think it was like, oh fuck, it's over. You know, like this guy.
Yeah, I was like,
at least
okay, well, it's done now.
most African species, if they know something's up like that, you're not going to get another chance. It's like they're gone.
Yeah.
They don't a lot. Unlike, I mean, at least in my experience with stuff in the US, if something sees you and it runs, often you get a little moment when they like stop. You know, they pause, and then that just doesn't happen often in South Africa. So this was an amazing stroke of luck. But like, for some reason, that pig circled around, right? Like he looped around, probably like a 30 or 40 yard circle, and it just to kind of smell our wind. And at that point, it really felt like it was like, we're done, you know, this is not going to go well. But at that point, it's also like, it's the end of the day, like they're not going to get another chance. We might as well.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I didn't even. It happened so quick. I didn't even have a chance to get my rangefinder, and I mean, you just drew, and just estimated. I was like, it's at 30, and I was thinking this guy is crazy if he's gonna shoot this thing.
And it's like almost, it's like pitch black at that point almost. It's so dark.
Yeah, I mean, it was very low light, still fine to shoot, but risky, very risky, and especially when an animal knows something's up, and a pig. I mean, this thing can spring jump you, and to still fine to shoot, and I was like, okay, he's at 30, and he just started walking into us because he was kind of like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, he's at 25, and then the shot broke.
I think it even got closer, hey? But yeah, it's like...
It could have. And then the shot broke, and it was like, whoa. I couldn't believe it had happened because, I mean, yeah, like I said, I put that video camera away. It's like, there's no ways anything's going to happen. And now you've just arrowed this massive boar.
And the
So
funny...
then we say, okay, continue. What were you going to say?
What was I going to say? Sorry, I know I'm interrupting you. So the funny thing was, you were behind me. I obviously wasn't looking over my shoulder. We weren't having a big old chit chat. You were just whispering to me. And as this thing was looping around and kind of coming in, quartering slightly, like walking across, walking towards us, you were giving me ranges like regularly. And I assumed that you were ranging. Like in my mind, you're like over my shoulder holding the rangefinder.
Yeah,
And it was only afterwards that it was like, oh no, you're just guessing this stuff. Like brilliant.
Yeah.
And I guess you can't move. You can't move. This thing has us pegged.
No,
like,
if I had moved to take my range, it would have been done.
yeah. So
I said, look, he's at 30, he's at 20, he's probably 26, 25. Okay, then I think eventually it was like 22 or 23.
and it was also it was so dark, like the shot went off. I use neon pink fletchings so that I can see where the arrow goes, right? Like I see that it's like so visible. It's the most visible fletchings to find your arrow, all that kind of stuff. I remember thinking in that moment, because you get that slow motion moment, it was dark enough that I didn't even see the fletchings. Like I didn't even see the light like shining off of the pink fletchings. It was just like a dark arrow going into a dark body. Go on, sorry.
Man, and then I was like, okay, let's dot our I's, cross our T's. Let's get our backpacks, put our boots on, and start. Like we need to start. Now give it a few minutes and get toilet paper out, torches. We even put a torch on our backpacks because it was getting so dark.
That's true. But you should explain this, right? Because that probably sounds a bit different if you take it out of context. Okay, so we got our toilet paper out. Yeah, no, it was a shit scary moment, but this is like a tracking trick, which is like a classic thing in South Africa, which I actually use in America now as well. Definitely a thing to do is you should always, I mean, you probably always have toilet paper on you anyway, but like as soon as you shoot an animal, you take toilet paper, you put it on a little bush or anything that's near where you are taking the shot, and then you also, after like 20 minutes, use it as a marking tool, right? You take another piece of toilet paper, you hang it on the bush right next to where the animal is, and then you go from there. Like you mark your spot each time, and that's it.
Especially, I can't say for the States and those places, but in South Africa, you'll look at a bush where you shot the animal, and then you'll look away, and you'll look back, and you'll say, which bush was it? Was it this one? This?
Yeah.
So just having everything marked, clearly visible, best way to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, we put our headlamps on and checked the arrow out. And I was like, dude, there's blood on here. Like, we need to find this thing now.
But it was so dark, right? Do you remember? It was so dark, and I shoot really heavy arrows.
Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't even know if you
super.
hit it.
It wasn't even super heavy. I think it's like 650 grains or something like that. And we shot it, and it was so dark. The fletches, we didn't even see the fletches. And you were like, "You missed."
I didn't even know if you hit it.
It was like, "Oh," you were like, "You missed." I was like, "I don't know. I don't think I missed, did I?" So yeah, it was only once we got to the arrow that we discovered.
Then I saw blood, and I was like, okay, this thing's been hit. Then I checked the time. It was 8 o'clock. And I was like, probably not going to have this milkshake.
Sorry,
And
Cayden.
now I was like, okay, let's get down and find this thing. So we'd obviously seen it, the direction it had ran. And there's just tons of these, these drainage fingers. So, I figured this thing must be in one of these fingers just lying there, dead.
Yeah.
And I mean, the issue what I saw was there was a big green thicket. And I said, if that thing's ran in there,
Yeah.
I remember the
We're in
thicket was on
trouble.
the left. And I said, if it's gone in there, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Very, very. And I remember how anxious you were. Because when you are like the spectator, I mean, of course you're invested in it, but it's not the same feeling. Look, I mean, tracking's fun. I mean, you're like looking for blood, whereas when you're the bow hunter, the hunter, every bit of blood is like heart palpitations. The blood's drying up, and it's just emotions. Like, it's so crazy. Then,
I remember.
so we got to the arrow, and then I was like, okay, let's start. And like, no blood. And then bang, we see a little bit of blood. And we just start trailing, like not seeing anything, then blood.
Yeah.
And then it started getting consistent.
Yeah, it did.
It was like, I think we're actually going to find this thing. Like, there's blood's getting good. And then it was strange because it was actually heading uphill, like very gradually.
Yeah.
But slightly uphill, which is a wounded animal is going to run downhill.
It's not a great sign.
Easy
Yeah.
path. So I don't even think I said it to you, but I was like thinking, I don't know, this is a bit interesting, but let's see.
Yeah.
And we just, blood by blood, on hands and knees, find blood, move.
And it was
And
kind
just
of,
slow.
you remember it was kind of harder to find that blood as well because it was,
Dude, very hard.
it was, although there was a bit more, like there was a few splashes here and there, the crazy thing was after like 10 or 15 minutes of waiting, maybe 20 minutes, the blood was baked dry. It was almost looked like it was part of the dirt.
Yes.
It was like part of the dirt. It wasn't wet at all.
It
All
wasn't
the
moving,
moisture,
yeah.
because it had been so hot that
It just
day.
been sucked in.
It was like sucked in by like Mother
And I
Earth.
remember that, yeah.
And it was
It
crazy.
wasn't that like Crimson Tide that you used to. It was
Yeah.
completely different.
Was dried out.
But man, yeah, it was actually we actually sped it up, but we spent a good amount of time trying to find that first bit of blood.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
Um, then once we found it, just started edging. And at this point, I mean, it's pitch black. It's basically just the starlight and the moon, which was illuminating us. And, just keeping our head down, just going. And then, man, we just looked up and this thing was just stone dead.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, he's there. And it was just like hugs and like, no way. He's like, and I was like, it's huge, it's giant. And I mean, you smoked him. Like, I mean, probably if it wasn't so much undulation, we would have seen him go down easily. I mean, what, he was like 60, 70 meters.
No, I think it was further than that, right? Like
No, actually, no.
no, it was like 200 plus, 250.
Yes, it was far. That's what I mean.
We ended up
Everything
going.
was so blurred. It was far.
No, you're right. We ended up tracking for quite a while, but it definitely
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it took us so long to find the first blood that it's
Yes.
always that like squeaky bum moment where you're like, oh,
Yes.
this doesn't look good right now. But the amount of blood like progressed more and more and more, and just got to the point where it's like, okay, this thing is gonna die soon. We're gonna find this thing piled up somewhere.
Yeah.
But it
But
turned out the
also-
reason why was because of, although we didn't see, it was so dark, we didn't see where the shot hit, but I do remember that the thing dropped. And I already, like, I heard this from you guys, you already told me
Yeah.
this before, and about like, even these pigs have got crazy reactions, like string jumping, right? Like I aimed at like the very bottom of like where the leg meets the belly. And, ranging, maybe, it was tough because we were just doing it by eye. It was pretty dark, but the thing dropped so much that it ended up being a high hit through the lungs. It was
Yeah.
fine. It was a double lung, but it meant that the blood has to go like build up in order to start coming out the top of the lungs, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, also with, like a fixed blade. I think yours is single bevel.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, that sometimes they just don't bleed as much. But man, I remember, yeah, we just the thing is also at nighttime. It's night, and you are stalking or trying to find potentially wounded warthog boar.
Yeah.
And if you corner this thing next to, I mean, it can easily come at you. So that was also an added element.
Yeah.
But man, it must have been 9 o'clock that we found it. Because
Yeah.
I think it took us about an hour just creeping very slowly. So, I mean, now we've been up since 3:30. And finally at 9 o'clock, we found this thing. And it was huge. And then it was like, okay, let's, gut it. And then it was like, dude, the car is like 1.5, 2 Ks away. And then I was like, what direction is the car?
Yep. It was definitely a moment, which, it's not the end of the world, but there's always the stress of the heat, right? Like you want to get it out of there quickly. We did need to like do a bit of navigation using our apps and things to figure out where it was.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, fortunately, we dragged it for about 200 meters, 300 meters, and we got to a road.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Like
and
a
then-
dirt farm road, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, farm road. And what that meant is that you could go to the car, I'll stay with the animal, you go to the car, and then try and find me, which was also even a hard task because we didn't know the property. So I think I just stood there with my torch on, trying to like signal you. But yeah, I mean, you managed to get to me, and then
Yeah.
it was, I mean, by that time it was 9:45.
It was late, yeah.
So we loaded him in the back of the truck, and by now I was like, I actually had phoned the restaurant to see if they could like stay open a bit later when you were gone. There was signal.
Oh, nice.
I phoned the hotel and they said no, we've closed a long time ago. The kitchen's closed. It's like, okay, well that's obviously this is sad, but what an awesome experience.
Oh, nice. That's so funny. I think I'm going to call this episode The Hunt for the Chocolate Milkshake.
Yeah, literally. And then we drove into town and stopped at that that fuel station, the petrol station or gas station, and we're like, oh, let's just put in some. I remember you said to the petrol attendant, oh, just fill it up.
Thinking like a normal truck, it's like, you know,
Yeah,
80s truck or whatever, like maybe 25 gallons. And fuel is
yeah,
cheaper. Well, no, it's actually comparable, I think. It's maybe comparable to the US, maybe a little bit
mm.
cheaper. So I was like, fine, you know, do Fred a favor, he lent us his truck.
Then after about I think 15 minutes, I looked to the. I actually I went in and bought food. We bought like sausage rolls and like a Steri Stumpy, which is like a chocolate milkshake, but it's not a milkshake drink.
A
Put it that
sad, a
way.
sad milkshake.
Chocolate milk. It's
Yeah,
chocolate milk. That's what it is.
yeah, yeah.
And the fuel attendant was still like putting fuel in. And then I looked at the meter and I was like, oh my goodness. It was like 140 liters. So we didn't know that this truck basically had two giant fuel tanks.
Yeah, like two extra giant fuel tanks. Yeah. It was definitely
Yeah,
it was definitely getting into like the $200, maybe 150 US dollar. No, it was like $200 already.
easily. Yeah, easily. And then you were just like, I've got this. And I was like, perfect.
Yeah, oh man. But now you
You
know
know, it
it's
was crazy. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and then I mean, we must have pulled into Fred's place at like 10:30, quarter to 11 at night.
Yeah.
I had to open up the cold room, load the warthog back in the cold room, and then yeah, man, like 11:30 or whatever, got into bed. And
Yeah.
next morning, I think we were up at 3:30 again.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, that was a very long day, but thankfully like a happy ending at the end of it. Apart from, sorry, I didn't realize, but there was no milkshake at the end.
But that I was still just in awe of that shot, dude. I mean, like so, it was crazy, and you smoked him.
It was at least the bow didn't creak again. I think that would have been the death of
Oh,
us and not
that would
the
have been
death of
done.
them. But
Yeah, I was just still, in awe of the whole situation because, from being so close and the pig being so relaxed to it looping around and you just coming to full draw, like trusting my ranging and, just releasing a perfect arrow was next level. Um,
I think it
I
was
was just like, wow.
I think there was some luck in there for sure. It was definitely, yeah, like such dark conditions, and I just had to go with what you were saying because I thought you had a rangefinder. You
Well,
were saying it with such confidence, so it was your delivery that
yeah,
was like
30,
perfect.
28.
I was like, yeah, perfect, thanks. Yeah, dude, it was
But he's
definitely
dead,
wild.
so
Yeah,
that's the most important part.
yeah, and it was funny
And
because he
wait,
was big, but like he was big, but actually not that super old, right? Like his tusks,
yeah,
super sharp tusks, which
Tusk
is what
like
we were
wasn't huge, but massive
afraid
one.
of. Yeah, yeah, it was what we were afraid of. Like, could he be wounded, like stabbing us with those tusks later? But yeah, they were like perfect, weren't they? They weren't like a lot of that time when they're like really old, haggard warthogs. They like kind of snapped off and messed up. But yeah, like really nice condition, good skull. Yeah.
No, just big, just a really big pig. And especially to get it after such a long day and together as well, experiencing something with someone else is a shared
Yeah,
experience. Hunting is so special, and especially walk and stalk, because it's so tough to even do it by yourself, but together with two people is next level, and
yeah,
to share that like exhilaration and the moment,
for sure. I
and
think, yeah, go on.
for it to end off with a pig, that warthog on the ground, dead, and to do it together was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was epic, dude. It was epic. And also, so it was like extra confidence having you there, like, all your knowledge and understanding of hunting in the area and hunting in South Africa and the species, it definitely made it like
Oh,
gave me that confidence to take those shots and things,
you
dude.
squeezed the trigger, so
But we
all
had a
credit
few
to you.
chances as well that we didn't even talk about, like a few close ones from the past. But one thing I was thinking would be good for us to talk about is like learnings. If there was like and we kind of covered them a bit, but like learnings from this, like from the day, you know, I think it will be fun to just be like point out a few details about South Africa and all that kind of thing. So I thought what you were saying was interesting, the double look. And I think that also like happens in the US as well, but it's very extreme in South Africa, and it's a really good thing to be aware of, you know.
Yeah, I think the biggest things is to be tactical and have a plan, not just rush in blindly. Um,
Yeah.
to really think, from that bush, where am I going to go?
Yep.
Is the animal going feeding to the right? Is it feeding to the left? And I mean, obviously the wind, the most important.
Yeah, I
You
also
can't, you can have the best cover. If the wind's bad, that you're not going to get that animal.
yeah
No chance.
I remember off of the thing that you were saying about like thinking about where your next place you're going to go, where the next place is going to go. Fred explained the same thing to me, Fred Hammer, when we hunted together later, and he expressed it in a really simple way, which was like, don't think about killing the animal or hunting the animal, otherwise you're just going to follow it around. It's always like, where am I going to shoot that animal from? Like,
Exactly.
what is the bush that I'm going to shoot that animal from? So
Because
then
it's also one thing getting close,
Yep.
but to be in a position where you can draw back
Yep.
undetected.
Yep.
Because you must remember your biggest movement is, if you're sitting like this, I mean, an animal can come close, but to take a bow out, draw back, and if you have heavy poundage, try drawing back slowly and then moving to aim. You have to think about, if I go to that bush, I'm not going to have a good shooting lane, but if I go to this bush, I can sit behind, it's going to walk out there, and I can draw back behind this bush and shoot.
Yeah.
So a lot of thinking, how am I going to get it done at this place?
Yeah. The level of detail is crazy, right?
Exactly.
Like, even the things,
Yeah.
because you're saying things I know now from the things that you've taught me and other people have taught me, that the relevance of which side of the bush is one thing for lanes, but also what's the shady side, right? So
Yes,
it's
exactly.
about like drawing back on the sunny side of a bush in South Africa is like it's over. Like the chances of the animal seeing you are really high because of that bow and everything. Like their eyes are so good. So coming and making sure, even though the lane might not be quite as good, coming around in the shady side is probably going to be a better option. So all these crazy things that you're thinking about
And then it's like, am I going to draw back when the animal's feeding, or you want the drawing back. Been close to countless animals,
yeah.
but guys are like, oh, why didn't you shoot? You were 15 yards, 20 yards. I mean, I've been in the middle of a herd of impala rams and I could not move.
Yeah. Yeah.
15 yards, 12 yards away, and there's nothing you can do. It's the most frustrating thing, but you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Also, just getting high ground. That's a tactic I like to do, is just sit up high and just watch.
Yeah.
And it used to be for me, watch for five. As soon as I see an animal, just run straight to it.
Yeah.
But I found the longer you stay up, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, animals just appear from nowhere. And you just almost like, how the heck are those things even, where they're coming from?
Yeah.
They just start revealing themselves.
Yeah. It's like gives you time and space
Yeah.
to think.
And then
Yeah.
another big thing for me is taking my boots off. I find that so important for me. That last 50 meters or 60, wherever it needs to be done, is just slipping my boots off in my socks. It's so much quieter.
Yeah, no, it makes absolute sense. I mean, we did it and it worked. It's always like a little bit perilous sometimes when you're in that kind of area where there's some prickly pears around. Like take a wrong step. I think I was pulling a few thorns out of my feet before the end of the day. But yeah, okay, there was like a couple of other ones that I wrote down, lessons from that specific day as well, right? So one, I was looking through old footage and videos from the day, and actually we had a couple of opportunities before which didn't quite work out. And one of them, you were behind me filming, and there were these pigs or warthogs in a thicket, sorry. And that was around the time when they were running around chasing each other, maybe a little bit later. And it was like coming through the bush, and you could see more than I could because of where you were positioned, just like a few yards behind me. But you at that point said, draw back, draw back, draw back. And I didn't. And that was a mistake, because I should have just done exactly what you said and drawn back. Like 15 seconds later, a warthog male like stepped out right in front of us, 8 yards away, like 10 yards away, right? And it was like, maybe,
dude,
do you remember?
I remember that now. I forgot about that.
But it was like quartering toward, maybe not.
Crazy.
Like maybe not quite like perfect, but like I think a shot would have been at least. You're definitely not taking a shot if you're not drawn back. And so at that point, you know, you're pinned.
It was that tiny window.
There was a window.
Just like that. I was like, just draw back, and then it popped out.
So,
but I mean,
next time
if you could have drawn back, and it could have taken 5 minutes for it to get there. Who knows?
It could have. That's true, because it could have just been feeding. But like, if you next time when you say draw back, I'm drawing back. I don't know where the thing is, what I'm shooting at, but I'm drawing back, and we can figure it out later.
I actually forgot about that. That was insane. That.
And then there was one other thing as well, and this was like, I guess the lesson of the day is never say never, right? Like it really can feel like. It can feel like it's over, and I think I've like busted a few. I think maybe even we busted one other stalk that day, making a stalk up to some pigs that were like actually in a hole that we didn't realize, right? And it was like creeping in, and then there was a moment where the feeling was, oh, they're not here, and then I think we stood up thinking like, oh, the hunt's over, we don't know where they've gone. And like then they bolted, you know, like the two of them.
Yeah, they were right there.
Either way, they were right there, like 15 yards away. So that moment, and so, but the thing was that it was like later, afterwards, having made that mistake, maybe saved us for the hunt that we were successful in, right? Because never say never. Always like it's not over till it's over. That pig on paper should have been gone that we shot. Like it should have been gone. It looped around. The wind was bad. It was already like clued into us, like. Things are not looking in our favor, but just like a bit of belief and just keeping going, somehow, you know, occasionally you get lucky. So it was that luck that saved us that day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think also one of my favorite sayings is you're not going to get an animal killed in camp. So just staying out there.
Yeah. It's true.
You know, just sit and glass, relax. There's always a chance.
Yeah.
Something can happen.
Yeah, for sure. Don't succumb to the milkshake.
Literally.
No, it's the same message. There you go. Yeah, awesome, dude. I mean, if there's anything else, I feel like we've covered that in minute detail, and it was really nice to.
I think if I end off to say, I think the most important thing for bow hunters is not, you know, obviously have your big adventures planned, but is to try and get someone new into bow hunting. I think that's one of the biggest achievements a bow hunter can do, is bring someone that hasn't bow hunted or hunted into bow hunting.
Yeah.
Or hunting, but specifically bow hunting.
I think that's a great idea, man. It's a good thing as well, because I think there always comes a time in anything, right? Like not even just hunting, but like it's always exciting and it's new and you're learning new stuff. And I think with hunting, you're always learning new things, but like definitely seeing the excitement, I can only imagine, because I guess I'm usually in this scenario, the new person. But when you've seen it all before a bit more, you know, seeing the excitement in someone else's eyes and like seeing their success is like definitely, it's cool, like a vicarious thing, right? And also credit to you, dude. Credit to you for, you know, we've hunted together a couple of times, and I know there are moments when you're like, I'm not even going to bring the bow this time. This is just about the experience.
That's some fun.
Yeah. So thanks again, dude. Thanks for coming on the pod. We've got some gold in there, that's for sure.
I mean, actually, I could talk for hours. people's ears off just chatting hunting.
Yeah, no, that's what we're here for, dude.
But yeah, I'm sure there'll be a lot more stories to share in the future.
Yeah, we can get out there and make some new ones. That's for sure.
Create some new ones. Precisely.
Cool, dude. All right. Well, Cayden, thank you very
Thanks a
much.
lot for having me.
And I'll speak to you soon. Right, that's another episode and another warthog in the game bag. A big thank you again to Cayden for the chat. Thank you for the patience. This one took a while to get out there. And also, thanks for the encouragement early on with the podcast. It was definitely Cayden who was one of the guys championing the idea of me of me doing this podcast. So yeah, a big thank you to Cayden for that. You can pay Cayden back. Well, I guess you don't need to pay Cayden back, but if you want to pay Cayden back, you can follow him on Instagram. Or actually, if you're just curious about his life, then get on Instagram, Cayden Marquis Personal. The spelling and the link will be down in the show notes. Give him a follow. I can almost guarantee you'll be jealous of his exploits. Now I've done my thanking of Cayden, it's time once again to thank everyone who's still listening. Tap that follow or subscribe button to stay up to date. And if you're feeling generous, then give this podcast a 5-star review. Or, even better, you could share it with someone who you think will enjoy the show. That's all for now. Thanks for listening, and until next time.